She was Finland's leader from 2019 to 2023, and at one point was the world's youngest Prime Minister. Sanna, good to have you with us.
Thank you so much and good morning.
Good morning. We know that there's apprehension around the world awaiting for Trump's policies, but we know during his first administration, relations with Europe pretty strained, and I can only imagine Europe is on tenterhooks.
Of course, Europe was watching the elections very closely, and I think the general atmosphere is wakeful because we don't know yet what the policy is going to be. Of course, there has been some worrying statements from Mr. Trump, especially concerning Ukraine and NATO before the elections. But of course, now we are waiting. Are these the policies that he's going to drive as a president as well? As a former European leader, I hope the strong presence of United States in Ukraine. We need strong United States in the center of global politics and also in Europe, in Ukraine, helping. So I only hope that Donald Trump will continue the policies that Biden had concerning Ukraine.
Is it fair to assume that Europe was actually rooting for Harris?
Well, I think that it's not for us Europeans to say what should be the outcome of elections in another country. The people have voted. I think the results were very clear. It was more clear than we anticipated. We thought that it might be a more close race, but the results were very clear. I think Donald Trump has a strong mandate, and now we are waiting what the policy is going to be. And we need strong US, as I mentioned. We also need a strong NATO presence. So I only hope that the policies being in the center of international politics will continue, and we won't see the withdrawal from international community that we saw before in the first term of President Trump.
As you talked about NATO, we acknowledge that Trump did indicate that he was interested in pulling out of NATO. The question really is, will it be any different this time around? And what kind of negotiations, conversations can happen? Some have suggested that Mr. Rudd, for instance, would be able to have those conversations with Trump on an equal keel.
Well, I think this needs to be a wake-up call for Europe. We need to be more strong ourselves, and we need to be better partners. One thing that I do agree with Trump is that European countries need to raise their defense budgets up to the 2%, where actually Finland, my country, is already, because we have that aggressive neighbor. We have the longest land border with Russia in all EU countries, and we feel the threat of Russia. So I think we need to boost up our defense capabilities, our defense budgets, and Europe needs to be more strong and better partner in NATO as well. So in that perspective, I think this needs to be a wake-up call for Europe to build our own strategic autonomy, our capabilities in defense, in energy, and especially in new technologies that I really worry right now. Is Europe lagging behind? Are we doing enough? Because we cannot only be dependent on US or China in the future. We need to build our own capabilities.
And of course, it's something that President Macron himself has been pushing for. Let's take a look at Ukraine. It is front and center. Trump has said that he can solve or resolve at least the conflict in 24 hours. How are you assessing how perhaps the Trump administration can play a part in finding a solution?
Well, I don't think that President Trump will solve this conflict, this war, in 24 hours. It's very complex, and the situation on ground is very severe. I have visited Ukraine many times since the war has started, during the Prime Minister and also after that, and the situation is very grave. I think there's always a momentum of peace, but the peace needs to come in Ukraine's terms, and we need to support them, give them everything that they need, the arms support, financial support, humanitarian support that Ukrainians need, and then it's up to them. What are the terms of peace that they can agree on? And then we need to only support them to have as big and as steady negotiating status as possible, so that they can have a strong position concerning negotiations with Russia.
Are you concerned how Trump might be navigating the crisis in Ukraine, because he does have pretty good relations with Putin?
We shall see what he will do. I think it's always good to have connections. It's good to have that kind of discussion lines, but still it's about Ukraine, Ukraine's future. And as a former leader of a smaller country, I don't want to see the world where big players or big strong countries are agreeing and deciding behalf of smaller countries. We have to follow the international rule. We have to obey the agreements that we have all agreed on. So I think it's up to Ukraine what are the terms for peace, and bigger countries cannot agree and make decisions above countries that are involved.
The US is the only superpower left in the world. How reliable is the US as an ally for Europe? How are you assessing that?
Well, as I said, we need strong US, and we need strong US presence internationally. I see that there is...
Wasn't it a strong US under the Biden administration?
I think it was. In the first Trump administration, we saw some withdrawal from international community and some worrying statements concerning the international cooperation. We don't know yet what the policies will be on his second term. During Biden's administration, we saw getting back into these international tables, taking more lead. And I think that that's very important because there is bigger fight of values going on in the world between democratic countries, the values that we present, and then the countries that have very different view on the world, the authoritarian countries that are now rising their heads, like Russia, attacking Ukraine, for example, trying to make some kind of new rule-based order in the world and not obeying the ones that we have agreed under the UN together. So I think we need strong presence and strong values from US. And I only hope that US want to become and want to be that kind of international superpower leading with values that we represent as democratic countries.
You actually paved the way for Ukraine to be part of the EU and eventually perhaps NATO. Would that be a game changer for Ukraine? How different would it be for the country?
Well, Ukraine has said themselves that they want to become part of European Union and that they want to become a member in NATO as well. And I think we have to support those aspirations. They want to be part of the democratic West. They don't want to be under Russian influence. And I think we have to support their pathway towards West. They are part of Europe, and I wish to see them part of European Union in the future, building their country as progressive as possible with those democratic values that we believe in. And I think when we look at Finland, we were a poor occurring country just over 100 years ago. We have had so many wars with Russia and we have lost land and lives. But after that, we have been able, as an independent country, to build our country, one of the world's most prosperous countries. And we have built a welfare state being part of European Union and now part of NATO. So I only wish the same kind of progressive future for Ukraine. And I want to help in that pathway, paving the way to European Union and hopefully also in NATO in future, because Ukraine has many capabilities when it comes to defense. They are the only European country that have that modern warfare experience, very recent. So I think they would be a strong add to NATO's capabilities in the future.
Sanna, you were the youngest prime minister when you came to power, but you were also the lightning rod for criticisms. You came under a lot of scrutiny. Do you think when you were prime minister, your youth worked against you?
Well, I don't want to think that my youth was against me or my gender. I focused on the issues and the matters, and I'm very proud that even though we faced such a huge crises like global pandemic, the war in Ukraine, energy crisis in Europe, and then Finland's pathway to NATO, we were able, our government was able to fulfill 98% of our governmental program, even though we have to focus also on these crises. So I think we were very effective, and we make big reforms on social and healthcare, on education, on parental leave, equality, and also we made one of the world's most ambitious climate targets, becoming climate neutral already in 2035. So I think that in my case, I want to think that maybe the youth and our young government, we had 5 female leaders. 4 of us were under 40 years old. We also made progressive policies and looked forward.